You know the feeling. It starts with that tiny little tickle in your throat, and by the next morning, boom, you're down for the count. So you stumble over to the medicine cabinet or you start scrolling online, and you're just hit with this wall of options, right? Pills, syrups, teas, sprays. Every single one promises to be some kind of miracle cure. But when you're feeling miserable, how do you know what actually works? Well, that's what we're going to dig into today by looking at the real evidence.
Look, every single year, millions of us go through this exact same ritual. The coughing, the stuffy nose, the aches, it's a cycle of misery we all know way too well. And we're all just desperate for anything that'll help us feel better and faster. So the real question is, when you're sick, what can you actually do about it?
And this quote just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? We are going to cut through all that noise by climbing what I like to call the evidence ladder. We'll start with the absolute no-brainer basics and work our way up to the heavy hitters, looking at what the science says every step of the way. The goal here is to help you build a smarter playbook for taking care of yourself.
Okay, first things first. Before we even get into any supplements or medicines, we have to talk about the foundation. These are the simple, non-negotiable things that basically all the experts agree on. You got to think of this as ground zero for getting better.
The CDC's advice is so straightforward because, well, it works. Staying home means you're not spreading it around. Rest lets your body actually focus on fighting the infection. Fluids obviously keep you from getting dehydrated, and, avoiding things like alcohol that just dry you out further. Yeah, that's just common sense. This is your baseline. But remember, these steps are about supporting your body while it does the hard work. They're not really about attacking the virus itself.
So that's the real question, isn't it? I mean, beyond just lying on the couch and waiting it out, can we do something that's simple, that's safe, and that can actually help kick the virus out faster? Well, it turns out the evidence points to a surprisingly effective first step.
And that brings us to saline nasal irrigation. I know, it sounds pretty simple, and it is. But when scientists pull together all the best studies on a topic, that's what's called a systematic review, the evidence becomes pretty powerful. It turns out that by just physically flushing out your nasal passages, you can literally reduce the amount of virus in your system. This isn't just about feeling less stuffy, you guys. We're talking about shortening how long you're sick and how long you're contagious. It's a super low-cost, super low-risk tool that has some really solid science behind it.
Okay, so now we're climbing one step up the ladder to one of the most popular herbal remedies out there, elderberry. You have seen this stuff everywhere, but the claims can be confusing. Is it for preventing a cold? Or for treating one? And maybe most importantly, is it actually safe? Let's try to separate the hype from the reality.
So the evidence here is, well, it's a bit of a mixed bag. A big 2021 review of all the trials found that the proof for preventing colds is pretty weak. But for treatment, so once you're already sick, the data suggests it may shorten your illness and make your symptoms less severe. Now the key word there is may. The evidence isn't super strong, but it is promising.
Now, there is this big fear that you sometimes hear about with elderberry, and it has to do with this scary-sounding term, cytokine storm. So in simple terms, this is when your immune system just goes completely haywire. Instead of just fighting off the virus, it goes into such an aggressive overdrive that it starts causing a ton of inflammation that can actually damage your own body.
And this is the million-dollar question that really worries people. The thinking goes something like this. If elderberry is supposed to boost your immune system, could it accidentally push things too far during an infection and actually make things worse instead of better?
And this is exactly why looking at the actual research is so important. That same huge systematic review specifically looked for evidence of this, and their conclusion was crystal clear. They found no evidence, zero, that elderberry causes cytokine storms in humans. So based on the science we have right now, that particular worry seems to be a myth.
All right, we've covered the basics, a simple physical tool, and a popular herbal remedy. Now it's time to climb to the very top of the ladder. We're talking about prescription antiviral medications, the heavy hitters you can only get from a doctor when you have influenza. So drugs like Tamiflu, they don't just help with symptoms. They're designed to go right after the flu virus itself. The way they work is by blocking the virus from making copies of itself inside your body. This can shorten how long you're sick and even prevent serious complications, especially if you can start taking them within the first day or two of getting sick. But now, check this out. A really fascinating study put a combination herbal product that had elderberry in it directly up against Tamiflu, and the results were pretty surprising. After 5 days, the recovery rates were basically the same for both groups. But look at those last two rows. The group taking the herbal combo had a much lower risk of complications and way fewer side effects. Now, this is just one trial, so it doesn't prove it's better, but it does suggest that for some people, it could be a really solid option with a great safety profile.
So, after climbing our whole ladder of evidence, what's the big takeaway here? How do you put all this stuff together into a smart, actionable plan for the next time you inevitably get sick?
Here it is, your evidence ladder. It's a simple playbook. 1. Always start with the undisputed basics, rest and fluids. 2. Add simple, safe, and effective tools like that saline rinse early in the game. 3. When you hear the hype about something like elderberry, question it. Understand that the evidence is a little uncertain for treatment, but the scariest risks just aren't supported by science. And finally, number 4. For something serious like the flu, know when to call a professional for the heavy hitters, like antivirals.
At the end of the day, feeling empowered isn't about memorizing a list of pills and potions. It's about understanding the why behind any recommendation. It's about learning to ask the right questions, like, how good is this evidence really? Is it just one tiny study, or is it a massive review of all the research? Is what I'm reading actual science, or is it just good marketing?
And really, that's the final takeaway here. This ladder of evidence idea isn't just for colds and flu. It's a mental toolkit you can use for pretty much anything in this world that's just overflowing with wellness trends and health advice. Being able to separate the solid evidence from the hopeful hype is probably the most powerful tool you have for taking control of your health. The only question is, how are you going to use it?